Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Calling All Creatures. So for all of you avid book readers out there, I am talking with author Danna. She is a.k.a. Sara Driscoll, so some of you guys may know her under her pen name, Sara Driscoll. And she has been writing K-9 thrillers. She's got about 10 of them out. Her newest one being Deadly Trade. And so she's on the podcast today to talk about her new book and kind of a little bit about herself and how she got going, writing and including, K-9's and stuff like that and writing these types of books. So I'm excited to talk with you today, Jen, and talk about your new book. And thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So, for the listeners who may not know you, why don't you just go ahead and tell us a little bit more about how you got started in your writing career and stuff like that?
So, writing wasn't my initial career. I actually did 32 years as a university research scientist and lab manager for infectious diseases, dengue fever, influenza, West Nile, HIV, and I finished my career with 3 years of COVID research, so had to go out with a bang. But during that time, I before all of that, actually, I started writing as a teenager. I'm from a very creative family. My two brothers are film composers. One of them is an Oscar winner. So the creative genes are sort of in our family. And I used to write as a teenager, and I used to snail mail chapters of the stories I was writing to a girlfriend who lived about 5 hours up north in Sudbury. Funny thing is she is now a professional children's author, and I am now a thriller author. So it just goes to show that the bad writing that you do as a teenager can pay off later. But I then stopped writing for about 20 years. I, went to university, got my degree, got married, had kids, had my career in science. But by the time my kids were about 10 years old and didn't need me so much, and I'd been in my scientific career for a while, and it, was sort of being more kind of a work-a-day job, the creative bug kind of bit again, and I started to go back to my writing. And I wrote a bunch of books, and then after a while, I was writing with a partner at the time, and we people who were reading our stuff online were saying, well, why don't you do this professionally? And we thought, why don't we do this professionally? And so we tossed out everything that we'd done, started a new series, and the first book in that series was Dead Without a Stone to Tell It, and the Abbott Mole Forensic Mysteries, and that was the first book that we published.
Very cool. So when you got into writing these books and stuff, what kind of gave you the idea to, feature law enforcement and canine teams and stuff as, part of your series? I was already doing mysteries and thrillers was sort of what I was raised on. Agatha Christie and Earl Stanley Gardner and nice.
Arthur Conan Doyle. Like, that was what my parents read, and I was like raiding their shelf. So the whole sort of mystery idea, thriller idea was always sort of what was there for me. But our agent had lunch with an editor from Kensington when we were probably 4 books into our forensic anthropology series. And he said that he was looking for a police procedural with a canine aspect as one of the projects he was looking to, sort of bring into the house. Well, Anne, my writing partner, was a dog rescuer and trainer. And so we sort of thought, well, we already have the law enforcement down. You're the canine expert. We can do this. And so we wrote up a proposal for 3 books and did, the first 3 or 4 chapters of one, and Kensington bought it, based on that. And that was the first 3 books in the K-9 series, starting with Lone Wolf.
Cool. So do you think your scientific background kind of influenced your writing style or the research that you put into your books when you write?
Yes, 100%. Anne and I were both scientists. She had retired out of doing science within the oil industry. She lived in Texas, and I was doing sort of bench science up here in Canada. So research of any kind was sort of our forte. So we kind of that's always been sort of a strength for us. We would sort of separate out, she'd research one thing, I'd research something else. And that really played into the Abbott Mole Forensic Mysteries, because that was my scientific background kind of coming out with, my love of mysteries. And so the ability to sort of get into the nitty-gritty of topics was something that we were both really good at, and has been super useful, because we've written a whole bunch of topics that needed a bunch of research, like urban exploration or mountain climbing. The current book that I'm writing right now has to do with caving. And so these are all things that I didn't have any innate knowledge in, but I have learned as we've gone. One thing I should maybe possibly say about this, too, is that Anne unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. So,
oh, no. Sorry to hear that.
Others may live. The 8th book in the series, I've been writing the series solo, but I thank God that she took everything that she knew about dogs and sort of, shared that with me. So her spirit is still with the series.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah, that's too bad that that she passed away and you lost your writing partner. But it's great that you're able to kind of, like you said, keep her spirit alive in, continuing your series and writing them. And I'm sure it helped, that she was able to impart her knowledge about canines and stuff, to you, because that gives you.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, when we first started the series, she was rescuing pit bulls and training them into therapy dogs.
Very
and so
cool.
She took one of her therapy pit bulls, and she jumped right into the whole nose work thing. They did training, they did, trials, and he got ribbons. And so that was how we made sure that our protocols, how we were running the searches in the books, were accurate to how they are really done.
That is so cool. I worked with a pit bull rescue here in Arizona as well, and unfortunately we just lost our founder for the rescue.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so not sure what's going to happen with the rescue now, if her husband will continue it or if it'll be shut down, which is unfortunate because she helped so many pit bulls in our community, and even in California she would pull dogs from California a lot of times too. So
yeah, they're great dogs that have a very unfortunate reputation when the problem is actually at the other end of the leash.
Yeah, exactly. And and it's interesting that Anne actually had one that she did, like you said, the scent work and that kind of training and stuff with, because well, they're tenacious, I guess. I know that because I own pit bulls myself. So I guess it would be, I don't imagine them doing a lot of the scent work stuff, but I would imagine they'd be really good at it because they don't like to give up when they get on, the trail of something like that they're scenting and stuff like that. So
yeah, that's the number one characteristic of a dog, that if they're going to get into this kind of work, is that they just have to have that drive.
Yeah.
They can't be like, I'm going to do this for 5 minutes. I'm done. I'm going to go take a nap. Like, they have to have the drive to keep going.
Yeah.
And sometimes searches are unsuccessful, and they have to still have that drive maintained so they can sort of pick up the pieces and start on the next one. But, I mean, as I said, pit bulls have had kind of a bad reputation, but very slowly more and more police departments are starting to use them in their canine work because they are excellent working dogs.
They are. That's what I'm saying. I mean, once you apply them to a task, they literally apply themselves to that task, and they don't like to give up on what they're doing. I mean, just, of course, obviously mine never did anything like that, but just in the play, when you play with them, you get tired before they do.
Yeah, and that's the perfect character. So there's a lot of people who have dogs that they consider to be sort of high energy or out of control, and they just it's just a drive thing. If you can focus that drive into something useful, then they don't get into trouble. You know what I mean?
We're training them. I do dog training besides working my full-time job, which I've mentioned a few different times on my podcast. But so I actually work for an organization here training service and therapy dogs. And a lot of pit bulls are coming more into like the service dog category and being trained to be service dogs for their handlers and stuff, because they make excellent service dogs as well. I mean, most people, or I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people probably wouldn't agree with this, but pit bulls are such a loving, caring animal that, and it's so great because they're now able to come into this kind of work as well. And that's a lot of stuff that our, service people, our ex-military and ex-first responders and stuff need, because they've been traumatized by the stuff that they've experienced or witnessed. And it's so awesome to have that kind of love and loyalty being given to you and helping you to deal with, whatever you may have going on in your life that's preventing you from, actually living your life, decently and being able to be out in public and stuff like that. So I'm glad.
Yeah, and pit bulls used to be considered nanny dogs about 100 years ago. So it's nice to see that that's kind of coming back around to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I've heard. I know a lot of people say the nanny dog thing, but I actually kind of looked into that, and I don't know actually where that started or came from, but it's more of a myth kind of thing. But
oh, is it? Okay,
yeah.
My bad.
Well, no, I mean, it's good. People say that all the time, and you'll see pictures of the dogs, like back in black and white, way back when they're with the kids and stuff. But yeah, because I was really curious, because I like to learn anyway, but I was very curious about it, so I started looking into that and then kind of found out that, yeah, there's no real origin from where that came from. It's just a lot of...
That's interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people just, I don't know, maybe because they were so good with kids. And, of course, Petey, who was in Little Rascals, and now I can't think of her name. Oh, Helen Keller, I think it was. She had a pit bull for a service animal, too.
Okay.
And stuff like that. So maybe it's, stemming from that kind of stuff that people thought more of a nanny dog. But in reality, who's just going to kind of leave their dog babysitting their child, I guess. But yeah, so it was interesting, because I know I've heard that so many times. And in fact, I mean, I've told people that. My son, who grew up, well, my kids grew up, with me doing animal control, and I made them come help clean the shelters and take care of the dogs and stuff with me, so they learned about the plight of animals and things like that. But, my son used to tell people the same thing about the nanny dogs. So, you know what? It doesn't hurt if you say it. Who cares, But, yeah. So it's interesting, though. I mean, how much, some of the outlooks turning around. Unfortunately, there's still the people out there that will bash them and think they're, horrible animals. But in reality, a pity breed or a bully breed is no different than any other dog. Any dog can have an issue. Any dog can turn on a person. Any dog can bite and injure, there's really no different in people. Well, they got locking jaws. No, they don't. They don't have locking jaws. That's a myth. So yeah, and it's just amazing though. But these dogs are amazing. Like I said, I've owned several over the last few years, and my old girl right now, she's a mix, but she's 16, 17 years old. I wasn't sure how old she was when she came into the shelter to me, but
right.
So yeah, so I've had her. She's been, from coming from what she came from to coming into my family. She has been one of the, and everybody says this about their dogs, but she really has been one of the better dogs with really no training. She's always been great with my kids, my grandkids. People come over. She has no problems. So yeah, it's. I mean, and that was all of my dogs actually. Like I said, I owned several different pit bull mixes over the last few years. I had 7 dogs altogether at once, and she's my last one now. I've lost all the other ones to old age, but so yeah, and it's just horrible that people think the things that they do about them because the media propagandas them, and oh my God, you had a dog attack, and it might not even be a pit bull in the attack. It could be a totally different dog, but they're calling it a pit bull, and everybody freaks out. So
no, for sure.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can't change some people's minds, and I'm not going to fight with everybody in the world to try to change minds. And I just know what I know because, like I said, I've owned them myself. I've done animal control. I do dog training, and I know what they are capable of doing. So I am really, really happy that you and your partner, had included them as well because, it's always good to get the good things out there about them. Yeah,
for sure.
So, could you share just a little bit more, too, about your writing process? I mean, do you actually kind of plot your stories out in advance, or do you just kind of let them develop organically? How do you kind of go about doing your writing? Because everybody's different.
Everybody's different. I'm definitely a plotter. I need to sort of know where I'm going. People talk about having writer's block. I don't actually get writer's block. If I start to have trouble sort of going forward in the story, it's just a message to me that I need to do a little bit more in-depth plotting as to where I'm going. So what I do is a process they call milestoning. So where I lay out sort of all the big plot points, so I know sort of like the general direction of where the story is going, but that gives you some room for some lateral, sort of organic movement through the story as you write it. So that's kind of a method that works for me. So, I know all the characters, and I know sort of where they're going and what the crime is and who did it and all of this kind of stuff, but then it allows for some development as you write. And I find that works best for me.
Yeah, and, like I said, everybody's different, but it's always nice to hear from different authors about how they go about doing that. And then any upcoming authors, are like, oh, yeah, that might work better. That gives them kind of a little bit of a tip for themselves on what they can try to figure out if they're going to start writing as well. So,
yeah, and for the people who write mysteries or thrillers, by pantsing it, my hat's off to them. I don't know how they do it. I think I would go crazy.
So, Deadly Trade, that is your newest one out in the series. When did this one come out?
It came out at the end of October of last year.
Okay, perfect. So, for someone who's kind of newer to your books, how does Deadly Trade, kind of fit into your K-9 series? I mean, can it be read as a standalone, or is your series something that people should read, in the order that you're putting them out?
I purposely write every book so that it could be an entry point to the series, because sometimes you win a book from Goodreads or you pick it up at the library and you're not jumping in on book one. And as the series is getting longer and longer, if you find the series, chances are good it's not going to be book one. So every book is written so that it could be a standalone. But there are longer character arcs that go, from the beginning. Like, for instance, in Deadly Trade, Meg is on her honeymoon to Todd Webb. They've gone to Hawaii, and she meets him in like chapter 3 of book 1. He's a firefighter, paramedic, and there's an explosion on the National Mall, and she meets him as the dogs go into the rubble to try and find some buried kids, and the firefighters are trying to get them out, and that's how she meets them, because together they save the life of a child. So it's these kind of long arcs, kind of go through it, but each individual book is a case on its own. In the case of Deadly Trade, Todd and Meg are on their honeymoon, and of course Meg, because of her relationship with Hawk, when you have a working relationship with a dog like that, the crucial part of the relationship is the bond between handler and dog. And so you can't put your dog on the shelf for 2 weeks while you go on honeymoon. You take your dog with you. And so they're hiking through a remote fern forest on the big island of Hawaii, and they have the unfortunate chance of running into a bunch of wildlife traffickers who are trafficking in near extinct forest birds. And so that launches them into this case of wildlife trafficking in Hawaii. And it's a good thing that Hawk is there, because they end up having to do searches and everything like that, and they're right there and ready to go. And Todd is always handy because he's a firefighter paramedic. He's good in any crisis.
There you go. So now, is Hawk also one of kind of like those long arc characters? Has he been with Meg since like chapter 3, book 1?
Yep. No, he's been with Meg since before book 1. So in book 1, they've already been together. So Meg was a Richmond Police Department patrol officer, and she had a German Shepherd canine named Deuce who was shot in the line of duty.
Oh, no.
She was so traumatized by this, she retreated back to her parents' animal rescue in Virginia, where somebody dumped a very sick puppy with parvovirus on their doorstep, and that black lab puppy ends up being Hawk. So she nurses him back to health, and they bond. And so she wants to get back into law enforcement, or at least into working canine, sort of the working canine life, but she does not want to go back to the police department and patrol, so they get into search and rescue instead. And then she contracts with the FBI, and so by the time Lone Wolf starts, they've already been with the FBI for like a year.
Wow, you really do look into all this stuff, don't you? Right down to the fact that the puppy had parvo. That's amazing in the whole storyline. That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's how their bond. You know, Hawk is her heart dog, and that's how their bond sort of starts. And she's hurting from the fact that Deuce was killed, and he needs to heal, and he's just been abandoned, and so they kind of heal each other.
Very cool. So what kind of inspired you to make this setting in Hawaii and have that mix of, like, say, the wildlife, you know, the bird poaching crime, and not to give too much away, but you also have a volcano erupting in this story. So what kind of inspired you to kind of use this mix of elements for this particular setting?
Yeah, it was funny because I was just finishing writing Summit's Edge when a girlfriend who also, you know, sort of runs a Facebook book group, Kelly Vayman, she sent me an article on Kilauea erupting, and sort of like, hey, this would be a neat place to send Megan Todd and Hawk. And I'm like, wait a second, they're just about to get married. They're going to need to go somewhere on honeymoon, and Hawaii is U.S. jurisdiction. And that was literally how it started, was just the fact that, I mean, when you work within the confines of FBI jurisdiction, it has to be, I mean, you have to do it to the, you know, inside of America. They can go outside of America, but you really kind of have to stretch things for that. But Hawaii was fair game, and so I thought, well, this is interesting because this is a very different environment from anywhere they've been. Most of the stories take place on the East Coast because they're centered in Washington, D.C. They did go out to Colorado for Summit's Edge. They've been to Boundary Waters Canoe area in northern Minnesota. So they've been to various places, but this is sort of the furthest afield that I'd sort of sent them. And so it made sense for the case to start with them already on the ground in Hawaii, because otherwise they might not have been sent that far away from Washington, D.C. But she's already in the middle of it when this whole thing sort of kicks off.
Very cool.
And Hawaii was someplace I'd never been myself, and I'd been to Florida and California and the Bahamas, and I knew that none of those places could be an adequate stand-in for Hawaii. So I was about 3 weeks away from starting to sort of draft this book, and I said to my husband, we have to go to Hawaii because I need to actually be in these places so that I can properly write them. And so we did. We booked a trip and we went to Hawaii with like 3 weeks notice.
Hey, you know what? If it works to get you to Hawaii, it works to get you to Hawaii.
It was a lovely trip. It was not a relaxing trip. My husband, who's a very good sport about this sort of thing, we had an agenda, and he made sure that everything that I had on my agenda got ticked off for the week that we were there. I think we had one day that we weren't running around like crazy for the book.
Well, it's too bad you didn't get to enjoy the islands a little bit. I haven't made it over there myself.
Well, we did definitely. I mean, we walked through a fern forest. We had to tour Volcanoes National Park to learn more about, you know, the volcanoes, and Kilauea was smoking its way, and it wasn't erupting at the time, but I mean, it's a beautiful place. Lots of drives between the west side of the island to the east side, over Saddle Road, which sort of goes between Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa in the middle of the island. It's a beautiful spot. So it's not that we didn't enjoy it; we were just very busy.
Yeah, I haven't made it there myself, but that's on my bucket list. I want to go to Hawaii.
Beautiful. Yeah.
I'm kind of the crazy one though. I would love to see volcano erupting because I just would love, for whatever reason, to see a volcano erupting. And
we would have too. We came back and like 3 weeks later it erupted. And we were like, darn it!
I know. Isn't it funny that you think about those kinds of things? Oh man, I'd really like to see that. I mean, and hopefully it wasn't, you know, devastating to the islands or anything like that. But yeah, and unfortunately though,
it was all in the caldera at Kilauea, so it was all very. I think they closed parts of the national park, but that was about it. But because I was writing about, I mean, you're setting a book in Hawaii, you have to include a volcano erupting. Like it's the only chance you're going to have to do it. At least for me, it's the only chance in this series that we're going to have a volcano erupting. It would have been nice to have seen it in real life myself, because that's sort of the ending of the book is you know, a big chase against a volcano eruption as well as trying to capture the bad guys. But yeah, I just watched a lot of YouTube videos and saw a bunch of interviews. But I would have loved to have seen it for myself.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I would love to see it for myself, but like you, I've watched it, you know, the videos, and unfortunately, you know, they had that bad one there that wiped out, quite a bit and took out
the
a lot of
neighborhood.
yeah. So, that was unfortunate that they had that happen to them. But unfortunately, that's what happens when you live in volcanic islands like that. I mean, you just never know when one's going to erupt like that and wipe out.
The island exists because of the volcano.
Exactly.
So it's a constant issue. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, I'd love to be able to go over there. And it's funny, I just had Arthur von Wiesenberger on with me not too long ago, and he is the producer and host of Animal Zone. And his latest latest episodes he put out, he was in Hawaii. And and so he was actually talking, about some of the birds and everything. So it was just interesting, and then now I'm talking about your book and in Hawaii and they're poaching birds. so it's quite an interesting, small world, I should say.
Yeah, well, and Hawaii is the extinction capital of the world. They figure that Hawaii has lost more species than sort of the world over. So it's a real issue there. And they have many species like the Hawaiian crow. They're trying to bring back from the brink. I think there's like somewhere between 120 and 150 of them, and all of them are in captivity. And when they try to put them out into their old habitats, the Hawaiian hawk, the Io, which is one of their natural predators, picks them off. So they're going to try again in Maui instead of Hawaii. Hopefully they will have better luck there. But it's a real prevalent issue in Hawaii.
It's funny you brought up the Hawaiian hawk because on Arthur's one of his episodes, he was at one of the wildlife centers there on the islands, and they actually had a Hawaiian hawk they can't release back out in the wild because of break he had, or no, he lost an eye. So he can't go back out in the wild. But that's what they were talking about, that hawk, their natural diet is birds because they don't have snakes on the islands. So so it's birds for them basically. Maybe maybe there's some rodents or something they might get here and there, but other than that, it's birds. So
and because of human encroachment into their habitats, it's not like the birds. The forest birds their numbers are going down because they're losing their nesting sites, and so then what 200 years ago wasn't a problem because there was lots of birds for the hawks to pick off. Now they're picking off birds that are already endangered, and so it's problematic.
Yeah, isn't that the case kind of everywhere? We encroach everywhere, and then wonder why the wildlife does the things that they do. I mean, like even here in Arizona, we have. People are amazed and freak out when they see coyotes running in the town in Tucson, in the housing developments and stuff. And it's like, well, what do you think they're going to do? We're in their space. Exactly. I mean, and oh my God, there's a mountain lion that, went over by the elementary school where the kids are all at. And it's like, well, I'm sure it did. It's got a pretty large territory, but if it's not attacking anything and, this is their habitat, we have to kind of remember that. So... I live in a fairly urban area, and it was only a couple of years ago that there ended up being a bear in the middle of a schoolyard. Yeah. And so they had to, send in animal control to tranquilize it and transport it back out into the country where they let it go, but we're in their space. Yep, we've had a couple that I live in a smaller town southeast of Tucson, and we're kind of in the little valley area with mountains around, and we have bears come down out of the mountains sometimes when there's a big drought or they can't find food. They'll come down into the town. We just had one here recently that was down here. So same thing, animal control or Fish and Game or somebody comes out and tranks them, and then they take them back up into the mountain and release them again. So
yeah, that's good.
So we've talked about, Hawk and being the K-9 and like one of your central characters with Meg. And you kind of actually gave us the backstory on how you developed Meg and Hawk's relationship in the book. Do you have any other characters in your books like this that work with the dogs? And if so, how do you develop those relationships between the handler and the dogs? I mean, obviously you had your partner there who was, working with dogs, so I'm sure, she had something to do with helping, on how you develop that. But how do you kind of go about getting those relationships developed?
Yeah, well, so when the book starts, when the series starts, this is the human scent evidence team is sort of what they are a part of, which is part of the larger forensic canine unit, which is a real unit. Both of these are real sort of groups inside the FBI. So there's 4 different dog handler pairs, and the other main one, which they considered sort of Meg's partner, is Brian Foster, and he has a German Shepherd, Lacey. But it's the dog handler bond that is really the key to the series. Some books will do like where they write so that the dog has a POV, so you can hear what the dog is thinking.
Okay.
And I wasn't really comfortable with that, because do we really know what the dog is thinking? So we get Hawk's point of view through Meg. She interprets, his body language and how he communicates with her, and so we get his point of view through Meg, and that holds for all of them. But it's really the bond between these dogs and handlers that is the key to the entire series. It's the heart of the series. Their teams work as well as they do because of the bond between the dogs and the handlers. And people say to me, are you ever going to kill off any of the main dogs? No, I couldn't live with that. But they do sometimes get a bit roughed up. And so you really see sort of how in the 5th book in the series, Leave No Trace, Brian's dog Lacey gets in between him and a mountain lion while they're out doing a search. And Lacey is very badly injured, and she's like an 80-pound German Shepherd, and Brian carries her out of the wilderness so that he can get her to an emergency vet. Like, this is just, they are sort of their canine soulmates. They're their other halves. So it's so critical to the whole series, that dog handler relationship.
Yeah, I was going to say he better have carried her out to get her veterinarian care.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah. And she makes it, of course, because I couldn't kill off any of the dogs in the series. But yep, I do sometimes kick them around a bit. Yeah. All of them, dog and human alike.
Though, I mean, if you were in a real world scenario with that kind of stuff, I mean, we have search and rescue teams here in Arizona that go out, looking for hikers that get lost, or someone that might, is up in a canyon or something and falls and gets hurt and stuff. I mean, those are really real life scenarios. They might encounter a mountain lion out there, or a bear, or
Yep. They're all realistic. There's one search that goes into the Great Dismal Swamp in Virginia, and they run into an alligator. Like, nature is not sterile. Wildlife lives out there, and so if you're in their space, once again, you may have interactions with them, and that's realistic. And a lot of these searches, they can be quite dangerous. They're looking for someone who's gotten into trouble because of where they are. They still have to get to them. In the book that I'm writing right now, it takes place at Mammoth Cave National Park, where these huge caves that are extremely dangerous, and they're taking the dogs down into the caves trying to track missing children, and they have to tackle the environment as it is. You can't kind of get around it, and there are real dangers inherent with that. Right.
So when you're writing your books, have there been any like real life cases or experiences, say with the wildlife trafficking, or the law enforcement aspect? Like you said, they're searching for kids and some of them and stuff, that has kind of been a part of your inspiration then?
By and large, most of the cases have just sort of come sort of out of our heads or my head. But the one that kind of comes to mind is the book That Others May Live, which is the 8th book in the series. I don't know if you remember, in Surfside, Florida, there was a condo building that half collapsed. I believe it was June of 2021. Yep. And Anne was still with us at that point, and she and I were sort of looking at this scenario, and the first thing that we noticed was that the very first responders were the K-9 teams. Yeah. And they were, running over the rubble, trying to find, the survivors. And so, unfortunately, Anne passed away following that. And so I sort of thought, that this was a good scenario, not to sort of, take advantage of the pain of these families who lost their loved ones, but because of the extent that the first responders went to in responding to this tragedy. They were there for weeks trying to find the living, and then trying to, recover the dead for the families so that they would know for sure that their loved ones were gone. And so I did that same kind of scenario in Washington, D.C., all 4 dog teams immediately respond. They're the first on the pile. They have some live rescues, and then they have to deal with the dead after that. And Todd's on scene because he's a firefighter, so when there's a collapse of half the building didn't collapse, so then they're trying to get the living people out of the precariously balanced part of the building. So it was a real team effort in that book, but it was based on Champlain Tower South collapsing in Surfside, Florida.
Yeah, I do remember that happening. That was a horrible thing. And and now talking about that, 911. I mean, look at all of the search and rescue dogs they had there trying to find, the dead and the living in that rubble after that happened. I mean, I'm not sure, but I think the last dog passed away.
Yeah, the last dog has passed away at this point.
Yeah. So, God, I can just imagine, how hard it is and stuff. I'm actually hoping I've contacted them. We'll see if they get back to me. I think they're called the Search Dog Foundation. And
Search Dog Foundation.
Yep, I've contacted them. I'm hoping I can get them on my podcast as well so we can talk about, all the great work that they're doing and the dogs are training for doing this kind of work. So,
they do extremely good work.
Yep. So I'd love to have them on to talk more with them about everything that they do and how they train their dogs and what they go through. It's funny. I saw it when I was watching some of Animal Zone. They actually have the commercials on for them where a dog comes off the street, picked up by animal control, and then SDF comes in and rescues the dog and trains him to be a search dog, and he searches and finds a gentleman in rubble like that. So that's that would be great to have these guys, because people, I don't know if they realize how much goes into training dogs to do this kind of stuff, and with that being a lot, and then with that being said, the kind of stress and stuff that's put on the dogs and the handlers that do that work. Dogs can actually get PTSD just like humans can. And I sort of highlighted that. Like I said, that was part of why I wanted to write that book, was not because of the tragedy, but because of what we saw from the first responders for that whole crisis was just absolutely amazing, and I sort of felt needed to be highlighted. But when the dogs are doing this, and we saw this a lot with 9/11, was you find in the first 8 hours you pull out the living, and then after that there's nobody. It's not a rescue, it's a recovery. Yep.
And the dogs get depressed because they keep finding, all they can find is the dead. And so what they will do is they will actually purposely hide first responders in the rubble so the dogs can find living people.
Yeah.
But it's really hard on the handlers because the handlers know there's nobody alive there.
Right.
So you can fool the dogs, but you can't fool the handlers.
Yeah. I had a podcast a while back with a gentleman. He's on the East Coast. I want to say, is he in, I don't know if he's in Maryland. Gosh, I've had so many on, I'm trying to remember his name. I think it's Jim. Anyway, I can't think of his last name, but he actually has set up, he takes in dogs with PTSD from like first responders and from K-9's from the military and from the police and stuff like that are literally suffering from PTSD and may or may not be able to be a part of society anymore because they're so traumatized. He actually did a movie documentary about one of the dog. I think it was the first dog that he took in that kind of got him going down this path, and it's called Saving Dakota. And wonderful documentary movie, by the way. If you guys out there get a chance to watch it, find it and watch it. It was a great documentary about him and what this dog is going through. And literally, this dog, he's the only one that really, he doesn't allow, he doesn't allow public to come in and see the facility, stuff like that, because of what he does. And these dogs literally could be considered dangerous, to other people. So even the people that work there, it just depends on the dog. But some dogs, he doesn't even allow the people that work there with him to really interact with him. He does it himself. But he's been expanding his facility, and he's actually giving classes and stuff now for people to take to help dogs with PTSD and, their owners and stuff like that have dogs that suffer from this kind of stuff. So it's great work that it's great work that he's doing. So, but he's back on the East Coast as well. I just wish I could think of the name of his facility, which I feel horrible about because, he's doing such great work. But like I said, after as many podcasts as I've done, it's hard to remember everybody's names and stuff. So
I bet, yeah.
But if you can look up Saving Dakota, that is the name of the documentary movie. And
I'll definitely look into it. Thanks for the rec.
Yeah, James is the gentleman in the movie, like I said, with Dakota the dog. So, wonderful documentary about it. So,
yeah, great.
So, what would you consider was probably the most challenging part of writing Deadly Trade? I mean, was it your procedural details, the suspense that you kind of have to get in your thriller books, or maybe the action sequences of where, they're actually going after poachers and stuff like that?
I would say actually the hardest part of that book was just trying to nail the environment, to be really true to Hawaii and the Hawaiian environment. And like I said, we did the trip there to make sure that we could kind of capture that. So to work that in, so the Hawaii ends up almost being a character in the book, and your setting is sort of as vibrant as possible so that it almost becomes a character. Was sort of weaving that into all those other elements that you mentioned. I'd say that was sort of the most challenging part of it.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, because you got to kind of make things all fit together. So.
Yeah, and Hawaii is a very different environment, for everybody who lives on the mainland. And especially for, I live up near Toronto in the Great Lakes Basin. Like, we're a very different environment from Hawaii.
Oh, yeah.
And just sort of, the people and the place and all of that sort of thing. I wanted to weave that in as best as possible. Yeah.
So, obviously, as we were talking about, you guys working in the tragedy in Florida and stuff like that, and obviously with Anne working with the dogs, what all else do you kind of do to research canine behavior that can help make your canine characters a little bit more realistic? I mean, do you ever get the chance to maybe go out and observe actual working canines that are doing some of this stuff, or?
I haven't gone out to observe, though I have talked to a number of canine officers about sort of how they do their work. The other thing that I do is there's a number of books that are written by actual search and rescue, handlers. Mm-hmm. And so you can, reading about the other sort of activities that some of these people have done sort of really helps sort of bring home how other groups do it, because there isn't any sort of one sort of main way that sort of nails down the best way to handle these searches. So it's good to see how other groups are doing it too, so you can incorporate some of how they do things. Like some of them are in Europe and that kind of thing, and not all groups handle it the same way.
Well, yeah, and as we've been talking about, I mean, they're in all sorts of different states, different types of environments. I mean, here in Arizona, you got deserts and mountains. Up Toronto area, Canada area. I'm originally from Michigan. Those types of areas, you might have to go out. Snow. Lots of rain. Those kinds of things. And in the Great Lakes Basin, around the lakes, you might have someone who's even they're around the lake shores, so you're going to be dealing with bodies of water, and then of course there's lots of lakes. They're not just the Great Lakes, but you're going to be dealing with lake shore areas, and then Europe. They've got all their different environments and stuff like that as well. Especially if you're, say, over in places like Ukraine right now with the war and stuff going on, or any of those areas. So it does all have to be different. There's a lot of
search and rescue in the Alps, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I looked into that a lot when I was writing Summit's Edge, because that was set in Colorado, up Pyramid, 12,000 feet up Pyramid Peak. But Still Waters, the 7th book in the series, you mentioned the water searches. FBI, canines need to go for continuing education just like everybody else in their job has to. And so Meg and Brian and the dogs get sent to Boundary Waters Canoe Area to learn decomp training, water training, because with their current skill set, they can follow the trail to the water and then they're just stopped. So they learn these other skills too. So I kind of got into, finding out different, from different dog handler teams, how they would handle sort of different things. It's very interesting.
I found out something that was very interesting to me. Now, we're talking about the water and, getting to the water and having to stop. But I had another author on a while back, and she had wrote about different things that, dogs are trained to do. And they're training dogs, so, because we talked about their environment and stuff. So I guess orca whales are starting to die off here and there. And so, researchers are trying to figure out what's going on with the orcas. And so they have actually trained dogs to smell for whale poop on the water.
Oh, interesting.
It is very interesting. Okay. And they can pick up whale poop, I think, is it 1 or 2 miles away from the boats. So they have the dogs out there in the boats with them, and they go out, and the dogs are scenting, and whale poop would float on top of the water for a certain amount of time.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so the dogs are sending out whale poop for the researchers to be able to gather.
It's amazing what you can train these dogs to detect.
Yeah.
Like, everything from electronics to, forest birds. Like, we talk about conservation dogs in this book, which was a new kind of dog to me because it's not a law enforcement canine. So you're familiar with like bomb sniffing dogs and drug sniffing dogs and all of these kind of things. But conservation dogs are trained, and basically what you're talking about is a conservation dog. They're trained on other animal species. And so they will be trained on seabirds or forest birds or that kind of thing, because there's a big problem with the seabirds in Hawaii. They only come onto land to nest, and they lay their eggs deep into these lava tubes. But there are rats and other invasive critters that will get in and steal the eggs and kill the babies. And so they use conservation dogs to be able to figure out where these nests are, and then they can block them off so the parent can get to them, but other critters can't get to them, and it lets the young hatch and survive. But I mean, that's the same thing with the whales. I mean, that's a type of conservation dog. And it's amazing what you can train these dogs to recognize, and their noses are just outstanding.
They have millions of olfactory. It was this book I read. I would have to go look at my bookcase real quick and see if I can find the book. But she talks about that in that book, and about how many olfactory nerves that a dog has compared to a human. I mean, they have like millions compared to. Yeah, it's astounding. Yeah. It's astounding, and then how they compartmentalize things. Like if it's a scent that maybe they're kind of more familiar with, they can kind of dismiss that. But if it's a scent they don't really know, or it's a first time smelling, they compartmentalize it. And then they can kind of go back to it, and
Well, and you can give them a scent target, a specific scent target, and they will find that scent target in the middle of everybody else or everything else. They can concentrate on that one scent and track that one scent. Like, it's amazing.
Cadaver dogs just amaze me too, that they can pick up cadavers so far under the ground. It's just like, how do they do that? How do they do that? It is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, the scent percolates up very slowly. It's like water searches. Like individual particles percolate up from something, 100 feet down, and they can smell it on the surface.
Yeah.
It's a little mind-boggling.
It is. I mean, the one story she said, I think the person had been, it was way back, I mean, over 100 years or something like that ago, that the person had died, and it was kind of like under this tree, but they brought a cadaver dog out, and that dog hit right under that tree, and they, there was an old, cadaver down there, that had been down there for, like I said, I think it was 100 or a little over 100 years. So
wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, it very impressive. I was amazed reading that book. I was just like, oh my gosh, I just can't believe some of this stuff. It was amazing. Anyway, but yeah, like I said, I'd have to go. I have it on my bookcase over there, but I'd have to go find it so I could tell you the name.
Yeah.
So, are there actually any particular dogs or animals in your life that kind of inspired Hawk or any of the other animals that you have in your stories?
Yeah, so Hawk is based on the black lab that I grew up with. So I will always have a soft spot for black labs because that was our Shady, our family dog as I was growing up. Hawk is much smarter than Shady. Much better work dog. We had a true family pet. She was fantastic, but a true family pet. So that's what Hawk is based on. And the only other animal I have that's sort of based on an animal in my life in the Negotiator series, the NYPD Negotiator series, the protagonist in that series, Gemma Capello, has a cat named Mia, and Mia was our first rescue. And she unfortunately got lymphoma when she was 2, and we did 9 months of chemo, and we still couldn't get in front of it. So she passed, just around the time she was turning 3. So we have a cat in that series based on Mia.
Awesome. Well, now that you kind of mentioned NYPD Negotiators, do you notice any differences when you're writing, say, your FBI K-9 series versus your other series like NYPD Negotiators?
The K-9 series has a real challenge because of the sort of the basis of the whole series is that each case has to be a federal jurisdiction case, and there has to be a reason to keep the dogs involved. And let's face it, for a lot of search and rescue dogs, they get called in, they do their thing, they're done at the end of the day. Like, that doesn't make a good thriller novel. So the challenge with the FBI K-9 series is being able to build a case with federal jurisdiction where we're going to keep the dogs involved from page 1 to the very last page. The NYPD Negotiators is a little easier in that case because I just need a hostage situation in New York. So it's from a planning perspective, there's definitely a difference there. But when it comes down to the K-9s, again, it's that dog-handler pairing that is really the heart of the whole series. And so where the Negotiator series, it's the character connections that are key, but it's a real, hardcore police procedural where there's this sort of slightly softer aspect to the K-9s, even though it's a thriller series, because of that relationship.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, you would see the difference because lots of people have that soft spot for animals and stuff like that. So, yeah. So what do you kind of hope that readers will take away from your books about the bond between, the human and animals after they, read your books? Just
really seeing how strong that bond is and how it's a real emotional bond for both the dog and the human. And just they are so important to each other, and I mean, it's not only their working life is based on this bond, but just their life in general is based on this bond. So just sort of seeing how strong and emotionally fulfilling that kind of bond is, and I mean, that doesn't have to be the bond that you have with your working canine. That could be the bond that you have with your hamster, or your cat at home, or your pet dog at home. It's just the human animal bond is really something to celebrate.
Yes, it is. And yeah, anybody that owns a pet, I'm sure if, the pets are family, I'm sure they understand that
absolutely.
Bond. So have you gotten any feedback from your readers for some of your books? I mean, about the animals or the suspense or any plot twists or anything like that? Or what have they had to say?
I do. I hear from a lot of readers who want to share their stories of their pets. Some of them are working canines, and it's always great to hear from working canines. They send me pictures, and I hear stories about what they're doing. But a lot of it is just, especially when I'm doing sort of more social things like on Facebook, people love to talk about their pets. And so that's sort of the real, again, because that's sort of the heart of the series, that's what a lot of people take from it, is that they want to sort of reflect back how much they love their own animals.
Well, and that's awesome. I mean, I'm glad that you're getting some good feedback, at least about your books and stuff like that. So, and that people are willing to share their stories because, I'm sure that also helps you too with your writing because, you get to, hear about these stories, real life stories and stuff like that. So I'm sure that's always a good plus. So. So now one of the things, too, your books often do highlight social issues like the wildlife trafficking and crime prevention and stuff. So what makes those kind of topics so important to you?
I mean, to me, it kind of comes down to, especially lately, it feels like this even more, but so often the world just feels kind of unfair. And so for me, there's a thread of emotional justice that goes through all of these books. Maybe we can't fix it in real life, but we can fix it in fiction. And so that's sort of the overarching sort of theme that goes through all of my books, is this idea of sort of emotional justice.
Yeah, believe me, there's a lot of things in the world today that that are going on that it's wonderful that you're able to, kind of offset with your books, for that kind of stuff. So,
yeah.
So if you could actually have a canine partner for a day, what kind of dog would you want to have and why?
Oh, it would have to be a black lab. I just love them.
My brother had a black lab. I understand.
And they're maybe not. They're maybe not. Hawk does show some aggression, but only if Meg comes under fire. Like if she's threatened, then he's right there. But by and large, their temperament tends to be a little easier going than, say, a German Shepherd or a Belgian Malinois, that kind of thing. So it might not be, a patrol kind of law enforcement canine, but yeah, sort of more along the search and rescue kind of line with a black lab. That sounds pretty perfect to me.
Yeah, my brother had a black lab, and he was a really great dog. My brother just loved him to death. So yeah, he was a good boy.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
he didn't really care for the cats my mom had around the place, but he was.
We had both a dog and a cat at the same time, so they got along famously.
Yeah, well, when they get raised together, especially, that kind of works out a little more. Yeah. But my mom's cats were kind of more the outside variety to help keep the rodent population down. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, she took care of them and everything, but yeah, they mainly lived outside. So yeah, he was not a big fan of the kitty cats.
Right.
Especially when they run, that prey drive sometimes kicks in, and he's like off and running after the kitty cat. So
yeah, well, we had our cat had the dog trained that if they were playing and the cat sort of just put his claws into the dog's muzzle, the dog was like, "We're done."
Yeah. Unfortunately, I happened to my brother's dog. You have been warned. Yeah, it happened to my brother's dog. He actually, the cat kind of, instead of running for a tree, because my mom had lots of trees, and then there was like a barn out there, but instead of running for one of those, he ended up heading out to like a field and with nothing really, and so the cat just finally turned on the dog because it had enough, and next thing I know, I see this dog's head coming up, and this cat has both of its claws and its muzzle hanging under, and the dog is just like, oh my God, what is going on? Get it off. So yeah, they do tend to show who can be boss sometimes.
They can communicate, yep.
Yep. I don't know if he's chased any more cats after that either, but
yeah, so he might have learned his lesson.
I think he might have. So do you have any advice for any of the aspiring authors out there who might want to write thrillers that feature animals or law enforcement or anything like that?
Mainly to do your research and like you could reach out to police departments, and depending on the department, they are, they might have a media person, or you can actually make contact with individual officers. When I was writing the forensic anthropology series, I reached out to the Massachusetts State Police, and they were fantastic. When I went down there, they met with me, and they, handed me a binder of their protocols and just said, mail it back to us when you've copied it all. And they were thrilled to, talk. People love talking to people who are interested in their work. So, the worst thing they're going to do is say no. I always encourage people to reach out to contacts within the working life of whatever it is that they're trying to write, because you could make a great contact and really learn how, from an person actually living that life, how that working life happens. So that's sort of my best sort of advice to them is, do your research, but then actually reach out to the people who do the job, because they're the best people to sort of show you how it's done.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, since they do it every day, they would be probably the best ones, to talk about. And I was just thinking, I think I actually said the name of that documentary wrong. It's Healing Dakota, not Saving Dakota. So
okay, great.
Just put that out there for everybody. If anybody wants, it's Healing Dakota. Sorry about that. Sorry, James. But yeah, so I was just thinking about that. I was like, oh my gosh, I think I said the wrong name. But so I know you just mentioned not too long ago that you're working on a book now. Is there anything you can share with us about this new book that's upcoming, or do you have any other projects in the works besides this one you're working on?
Yeah, so I have 2 books coming out this year. So in April, the 5th book of the NYPD Negotiator series is out, and that's called Countdown. And in this case, it's a hostage situation that happens when there's a ritzy New Year's Eve party on a yacht in the middle of New York Harbor, and all the rich people are taken hostage by someone in the middle of the harbor. So the teams have to figure out how to peacefully end this hostage situation without anyone getting killed when it's on a boat in the middle of the harbor. So that's a little bit of an extra challenge for them. And then in the fall, the next book in the FBI K-9 series comes out, and that is Killer Abyss. I talked about that one before. That's the one where teenagers are being kidnapped and dragged into caves in the Mammoth Cave National Park area, and so the dogs have to learn caving for the first time.
Those little spelunkers. I'm
That's
sure
right.
they do a good job too.
Yep, but it's a dangerous, caves are not safe places.
No, they are not. They definitely are not. Well, we are getting ready to wrap up the podcast. Would you like to throw out the information about where people could pick up any of your books, what stores they may be in, or if you have a website or anything like that they can go to find them?
Yeah, you can find my books in definitely in all the online places, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, bookshop.org, Books A Million, Hudson's bookstores, all of those. You can find me online. My website is jenjdanna.com. You can also find me at saradriscollauthor.com, but Jen J. Danna being my actual name. So you can find me on Facebook or Blue Sky or Threads or Instagram under Jen J. Danna. And Facebook is sort of my main way of keeping people updated, but all the other ones too as well to a lesser extent.
Well, that's awesome. I will also put a link to your web pages on my Facebook page and stuff like that. So if people happen to be on mine, they can link over. I do that for everybody's, just in case. You just never know when someone's looking at something and go, oh, hey, I want to know more. And then they, are able to click on that link and go over. So, and
on the main page of the website, jenjdanna.com, I have a sign up for my newsletter. So I do, people who get the newsletter get early sneak peeks at books, early chapter releases, early cover reveals. Sometimes I do giveaways just for the newsletter people instead of for everybody in general. So that's another good way to kind of get in on the goodies.
Very cool, very cool. So everybody, if you guys are interested in reading any of Jen's books, sorry, I didn't mean to say Jen's books, again, it's under your pen name, which is Sara Driscoll. And you guys go out there and take a look and find her series and pick them up. I'm actually going to, I think, go grab Deadly Trades and read it. And I haven't had a chance to read it, obviously, but I did summarize, kind of what it was about so we could talk today. But I would love to read it now, especially after talking with you about all the really cool things and being in Hawaii and stuff. So I'll have to go out and grab a copy of it for myself and give it a read, and then but yeah, if you guys are interested in going out and getting her books, go take a look and grab one and start reading. I mean, reading is great. And you learn all sorts of really cool things from there, and it opens up the mind for the imagination as well. So highly recommend it. So, well, Jen, it was awesome having you on the podcast this evening. I'm so glad you were able to join me and talk about this book and your upcoming projects and about all this great stuff we talked about when it comes to dogs and search and rescue and stuff like that. So I was so glad to have this conversation with you. It was great.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a really great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Well, I'm just going to go ahead and announce my next couple podcasts that are going to be coming up. And you're welcome, I tell everybody, you're welcome to stay on until the very end if you'd like. But I know people are busy and have other things to do. So you're also welcome to jump off at this time while I do those announcements. So, and again, I thank you so much for being on. All right, everybody. So my next couple of podcasts that are going to be coming up on February 19th, I'm actually going to have Adam Spencer on, and he is the founder of Philanthropy. So Adam, you would think I would have all my information here at my fingertips, but of course I don't. Let me pull up my information here real quick. Jen just dropped off there. Give me 1 second here, guys, and let me get Philanthropy up so I can tell you just a little bit more about what Adam's doing, because what he's got going on is actually really cool. It's a non-profit, there we go, a non-profit crowdfunding platform that helps pet parents pay for vet bills. So I think this is really cool because, we have so many pet parents out there that unfortunately, especially nowadays with the way the economy and stuff is, that are having, real problems trying to pay for medical care. I mean, especially when something comes up real suddenly, understand there's, different types of insurances and stuff out there. I do highly recommend it if you can afford it. Unfortunately, a lot of people live paycheck to paycheck, and I know sometimes it's just out of that realm, but if you can afford it, try to get pet insurance for your pets because it helps immensely when it comes to these kinds of things when you need medical care in emergency situations and stuff like that. But Philanthropy is a nonprofit crowdfunding, like I said, platform, and it is created specifically for pet parents to help raise funds for veterinary expenses, from emergency surgeries to maybe some ongoing treatments after those surgeries and stuff like that. Adam was inspired by his dog to start this platform, and he connects pet owners with donors across social media to help ensure that their animals can get the care they deserve. So Adam will be on and talking about, the story behind the creation of Philanthropy and what types of veterinary care that pet parents are kind of fundraising for. And, maybe a few success stories here and there of how, pet parents were helped with their pets, through this crowdfunding platform. So I think it's just a really cool thing that, he is going to or has started here for people because, I have talked before about losing my little girl, Saya. The emergency that happened and getting her to an emergency vet clinic, and then the kind of costs that I was looking at if we had been able to do the surgery to save her life, which unfortunately we weren't able to do. It was at no fault of the vets or anything like that. It was just where the tumor was. There was no way they could safely go in there to remove the tumor. It wouldn't have worked. She would have died anyway. So unfortunately I lost her, but that was going to be thousands and thousands of dollars for me to be able to try to get her surgery done. So I think this is an awesome thing that Adam has come up with. And so he'll be on the podcast on February 19th. And then I am going to have pen name Leocadia George, real name Monica. She's going to be on with me on March 5th. And she's going to be talking about some of her new books, or her newest book, I guess, that she's got out, Trumpet the Wolf's Story. So Monica actually volunteers at the Wolf Center, and when she first started volunteering there, I should back up a little bit. The story is about Mexican gray wolves, and so when Monica started volunteering, there was a pair of wolves that were trying to increase the Mexican gray wolf population. As many of you know, it's dwindled down to almost nothing. And so Trumpet was actually the pup that these two wolves had. And so Monica has written, or Leocadia, whichever you may know her by, has actually written several stories about Trumpet from when she was born as a pup and then throughout her life. And so we're going to be talking to her about Trumpet and the stories that she's been writing about her. Her stories, I think, are geared a little bit more for younger readers, which is really nice because, that brings, the kids into it, and about learning conservation and about the Mexican gray wolf. And how to help out in conservation efforts and stuff like that for these animals. Monica is still volunteering with the Wolf Center, so she stays there and helps out all the time. So she's privy to seeing all this stuff that has to do with these wolves and all the efforts and stuff that are being put in. So I think that's going to be a really awesome podcast as well. So hopefully you guys will be able to tune back in on February 19th and on March 5th. February 19th, again, is Philanthropy with Adam, and then March 5th is Monica or Leocadia with Trump with the Wolf Story. So I think we're going to have some good podcasts coming up for you guys to listen to. So with that being said, I hope you all have a great weekend and stay out of trouble and enjoy and stay safe out there. And tune back in and listen to the next podcast. All right, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.